Do we put the question? Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 8, which is that this House adopts the report of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Committee on its consideration of nominees to 31 constituency committees laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 22nd April 2025, and pursuant to the provision of Section 43(4) of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act Cap 414A and paragraphs 5, 2, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016 approves the list of nominees set out in the order paper herein for appointment to the following 31 constituencies committees of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. As members of that opinion say aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the Social Protection Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2025, second reading, resumption of debate.
My record shows, Carol Omondi, you had 7 minutes to wind up your speech, your contribution.
Yeah, thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I did point out in the morning that the measure of poverty is what is called the food poverty line, which calculates what the nutritional requirements or food energy requirements are per person, and then it is weighed against the actual food expenditure of a household or a person, and then we put you either above or below the poverty line. According to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, their study of 2022, the poverty rates are lowest in Nairobi at 16.5 and the highest at 82.7 in Turkana. The reason why I'm giving this background is so that we understand how to identify those we classify as needy. When I read this proposed bill, I'm a little worried that the classification may not be very scientific because we are using very general terms as persons in need, orphans, or vulnerable children.
Yes, there's a point of order from Honorable Atandi.
Honorable Speaker, this bill was moved yesterday, and this morning we have been discussing this bill, and most members are in agreement that this bill needs to be passed. I was going to urge you to ask the mover to just reply.
Honorable Atandi is out of order for the proponent of the bill to move closure of debate. Get another member to do so. You are legitimately right, but wrong procedure.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Sorry for that rude interruption. He wanted to oust.
Is in this bill, or is it moved by a leader of majority?
Yes.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong order. Anyway, let's allow Carol Omondi to finish.
So
then we'll put it to the House. If you agree, then we call the mover to reply.
Honorable Speaker, so the categorization under Section 28 may not be very accurate. Somebody could be an orphan, but is not below the poverty line. You could be an old person, but you are not below the poverty line. You could be a person with disability, but you are not below the poverty line. So I think there's some very serious work we need to do here to avoid controversies in the future. Secondly, as a House, it would have been better to understand the full cost implication of implementing this bill and the social programs contemplated thereunder. You realize it talks about non-contributory universal social protection program. We don't know whether this will take 100 billion or 200 billion. I think as a House in the memorandum, the leader of majority should have informed us so that we could really debate from a position of knowledge. Because it is going to apply to everybody. And those who will be excluded can easily go to court and claim discrimination and basically derail the entire system. So I think we need to do additional work. And in any event, if we are talking about universal non-contributory universal protection program, already there are so many forms of social protection that exist. We have schemes by government where we give subsidized foodstuffs. Yeah, there are schemes where we waive fees or we give free medical care. We have community health health workers who offer assistance and service to those in need. We have bursaries, we have free education in some components, and we have emergency funds, which are not included in this new proposal. And I'm wondering where all this will fit. I thought we should have a comprehensive bill that is dealing with social protection in all the spheres where government funds are being spent. But also, if you look at Section 31, Honorable Speaker, we are being told that the authority or the board that is being proposed to be established will conduct an assessment to verify whether applicants are eligible, or in other words, if they are in need and are eligible for protection. In a country where over 50% are below the poverty line, I mean, what kind of bureaucracy are we going to create that can assess all applications? Is this really practical? I'm just wondering how this monster will function, where you are being told in Turkana, the poverty prevalence is 82.7% of the population. How many forms will they have, or what system will they have to help us do this assessment? Mr. Speaker, I understand very well that this is part of the conditionalities in our relationship with the World Bank, but I think it is better we do good work and improve on this bill so that we don't create a monster that will not work, will just create acrimony in society, and eventually will be a conduit for corruption. I think we really need to do a lot of work. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, I'll give Timothy Kipchumba as the last contributor. For Tim, you'll have 5 minutes. Then we can ask the House if we can call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the letter, the intent, and the purpose of this very progressive piece of legislation. Honorable Speaker, this bill collapses the Social Assistance Act. Actually, it says when it is passed, it repeals the Social Assistance Act, which, in my opinion, had a lot of loopholes. So, Honorable Speaker, these are very progressive piece of legislation that as a House, we should be able to support. Honorable Speaker, this bill addresses the issue of second generation rights, that is social and economic rights. Honorable Speaker, those are rights that are provided for by the Constitution, and therefore we cannot ignore as a nation. Honorable Speaker, if you read clause 28.3 of this bill, it actually widens the scope of those who are entitled to social assistance and financial assistance at the age that they attain. Honorable Speaker, it expands that scope to include orphans and vulnerable children, poor old members of society, persons with disabilities, persons in extreme poverty, and persons affected by shocks. Honorable Speaker, that category of persons were not able to be assisted under the Social Assistance Act, which shall now be repealed once this progressive piece of legislation is passed. Honorable Speaker, apart from that, if you read clause 30 of this bill, it also includes a category, a very special category of non-Kenyan citizens in an emergency situation. Honorable Speaker, there has been a challenge on how to handle non-citizens who have an emergency in this country, and I believe that this bill, once it is passed, that category of people has been provided for and therefore will be subject to assistance. Honorable Speaker, of great importance is, if you look at part 4 on the issue of offenses, Honorable Speaker, for the first time, many vulnerable people have been conned or have been the subject of fraud by people who collect money on their behalf, pretending that they are the ones who are entitled to it. I've read, Honorable Speaker, clause 45 on the issue of fraud, which provides that any person who defrauds the board or conspires or aids or abets another person to defraud the board commits an offense and shall be subject, and on conviction shall be liable to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. Honorable Speaker, that provision was not there is not there under the current Social Assistance Act. So, Honorable Speaker, that is, for me, it is a progressive provision under this particular statute, which will be able to assist or to curb the issue of fraud. Finally, Honorable Speaker, in terms of transition, under Part 6, there is a provision on repeal savings and transition provisions. Honorable Speaker, since we are repealing the Social Assistance Act and replacing with this the Social Protection Bill of 2015, it provides very clearly that any person who immediately before the coming into force of this act was an officer or member of staff of the Directorate of Social Assistance of the National Social Protection Secretariat, not being under a notice of dismissal or resignation, shall upon commencement of this act become an officer of the board. Honorable Speaker, many other times as a house that we've passed our legislations and have ignored the issue of transition. Honorable Speaker, remember the issue of SHA. We passed a bill here, but we were not very clear on the issue of transition, such that officers from NHIF would have been taken to work under SHA. But because there was no clear transition provisions, those officers who are under NHIF were not transitioned to SHA. So, Honorable Speaker, this is progressive because officers or any person who had been appointed to work under the Social Assistance Act that we shall repeal shall now work under this particular statute. So, Honorable Speaker, I submit, I second this bill, and I urge the House to proceed to pass this particular piece of legislation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, members. Order Mawade, take a seat. Following the request by the Honorable Atande, I now put the question to the House that the mover be called upon to reply. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I stand to reply to the Social Protection Bill, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank members for the contribution, robust contributions, and we've had incisive thoughts on this bill, and I think we will have a very good committee of the whole on the same to ensure that we give Kenya a good social protection bill. Honorable Speaker, as billed by the Honorable Torotich, this is a very progressive bill that unshackles and unhinges a lot of things that are in social protection. So, Honorable Speaker, I reply.
Honorable members, we'll put the question to this tomorrow at 2:30. Now call out order number 11.
Order number 11, the Value Added Tax Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2025, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg that the value added tax amendment bill 2025 be read a second time. Honorable Speaker, this is a very short piece of legislation, a small amendment that is required to ensure that we remove some ambiguities in the value added tax. And as I do that, I want to prepare the Honorable Junet to second. Honorable Speaker, this bill just needs to do a small thing, and I want to do that. What it wants to do is to amend the value added tax. The bill amends the first schedule in paragraph 146 of part 1 to remove ambiguity caused by the use of the words after this date. When this bill was passed, there was that element that was put there that after this date. This created ambiguity in such a way that it was not clear which date the bill would take effect. And because of that, therefore, we want to substitute that small bit with the exact date of when the bill takes effect. So, Honorable Speaker, during the implementation of the Tax Laws Amendment 25, it became evident that the changes introduced ambiguity. The provision added to paragraph 146 states, providing that the value of such investment is not less than 2 billion shillings, and the exemption was granted before 1st January and shall continue to apply for 12 months after this date. Honorable Speaker, this House is aware that the Tax Amendment Act took effect on the 27th of December 2024. As currently worded, the amendment appears to apply retrospectively, implying that the Cabinet Secretary should not have granted exemption after January 2024, and that only exemptions granted before this date are valid for 12 months, ending in January 24. This does not reflect the intended purpose of providing a transition period of the VAT exemption. Instead, it inadvertently suggests that the Cabinet Secretary acted contrary to the law by granting exceptions through 2024. Despite the law at the time permitting such grants. Honorable Speaker, so what are we doing in this law? Honorable Speaker, if you look at the law, therefore, what we are trying to amend is this, that the first schedule to the value added tax is amended in paragraph 146 of part 1 by deleting the words 12 months after this date and substituting therefore the words 12 months from the date of commencement of this act. That is what we are doing. Just putting the words, substituting 12 months after this date to 12 months from the date of commencement of this act. And that is what we are doing, Honorable Speaker, in this small amendment. And therefore, I don't want to belabor the point. It is straightforward what we want to do as a parliament, and we should not take a lot of time. I want to request the Honorable Junet Mohammed to second, and after secondment 1, 2, 3 contributions, and we call the mover to reply, and we go ahead, Honorable Speaker. No, I'm just making a suggestion in my contribution. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Junet.
Proceed. Honorable Junet, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to second the bill on the VAT Amendment Act, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very small amendment rectifying what happened in the tax amendment laws that we passed in December. It's a very controversial one, but Madam Speaker, is also a necessity because it is helping manufacturing, big investors who have, who has put faith and decided to take risk in investing in our country, Madam Speaker. So it is part of the incentives that is being offered to big investors who have invested huge sums of money so that they can put up industry in our country. Madam Speaker, manufacturing is not doing very well in the country at the moment. It's about 3%. So with these kind of incentives, we expect manufacturers to be enticed so that they can put more money to create jobs for our people. So Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I second.
Honorable members, I now propose that the value-added tax amendment bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2025, be read a second time. Yes, Honorable Murugara, what would you like to say?
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this value-added tax amendment bill 2025 as explained by the leader of majority, the deputy leader of majority, and the leader of minority. Is a small bill, but it has great impact on what it makes provision for, looking at the first schedule to cap 476, which we are trying to amend. This particular section 146 deals with, or clause 146 deals with exempt supplies. And the provision that was made here is that the cabinet secretary has to make a determination on what to exempt from VAT to the provided magnitude so as to promote investment and manufacturing in the country or in the sector. It's important that every moment we pass these tax laws, we look at what investment we are promoting and what manufacturing is also to be promoted. And for purposes of legislation, it is vitally important that pieces of legislation have to be clear so that everyone reading the law understands exactly when that law is going to affect the person. So the provision to the Act is that provided that the value of such investment is not less than 2 billion shillings, and the exemption was granted before 1st January 2024, and it shall continue to apply for 12 months after this date. And this is where the proposed amendment comes in, that we now have to substitute 12 months after this date, which is the 1st of March, the 1st of January 2024, with 12 months from the date of commencement of the Act. The date of commencement of the Act is actually most important. In fact, by the time the bill is or was accented to, the 1st of January 2024 may have actually been eaten into, and therefore the new date of commencement would actually give the relevant 12 months, which have to be considered as concessionary. Therefore, this is a good amendment, and I support.
Honorable Speaker, I also rise to support the bill as presented by the Deputy Leader of Majority. Honorable Speaker, there are many ways of growing the economy. One of the ways of growing the economy is giving tax incentives to potential sectors that are important for regenerating more revenue and also creating job opportunities. Honorable Speaker, in this year, the economy is projected to grow on the back of manufacturing. And we are projecting that manufacturing is the one that is going to help us to collect more taxes and also create job opportunities. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the incentive that will be given to manufacturers in the steel sector to be able to defer taxes, VAT on their products is something that we really need to support as a House. And even though in the past I've said, Honorable Speaker, that tax incentives is an area that we need to kill so that we can be able to save 300 billion that we lose on VAT waivers. On this particular one, because of the prospects of job creation and growth of the manufacturing sector that we foresee, I think this is something that I want to urge the House to pass and allow these particular investors to be able to move in and pump in the resources they have. Some of them are foreign investors, some of them are local investors, and we believe that they are going to create the jobs that we need for our people. Honorable Speaker, in line with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that we are championing as broad-based government, this is something that is going to help the economy. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Amase, you can see she's pressed the intervention button. She's not here. Honorable Sunkuya. Honorable Irene Mayaka. Okay, Honorable Ounda.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me also stand here to support this value tax amendment bill, but that basically tries to rectify the error or the omission that was occasioned when we passed the business laws amendment bill, tax laws amendment bill, and typically we should have picked this one out, but normally things here are rushed, and the syllabus normally get rushed, so some of these basic things are left out. Honorable Speaker, what the bill is actually proposing to do is to extend tax incentives to investors. Typically, Honorable Speaker, in such an arrangement, this actually amounts to tax expenditures, whereby a country forgoes revenue with this hope that the investment will result in higher revenue. Honorable Speaker, I have attended so many forums on this subject matter, but the truth of the matter, it hasn't made any significant changes. We only end up enriching the manufacturers, and yet we leave the country poorer than it was before then. Honorable Speaker, EPZs have been here with us for many years. We have granted them tax incentives, yet they have not contributed significantly to improving the GDP of the economy, improving capital growth, and even improving per capita income in this country. So, Honorable Speaker, many of us were always apprehensive when these kind of amendments are brought without having any study to determine what's the long-term impact of this kind of tax incentives at basically milk and transfer the benefits from the people of Kenya to some amorphous institutions outside of this country. We just hope and pray that these incentives should only last for the period intended here. They should not go beyond this particular moment. And Honorable Speaker, tellingly, is just targeted to a certain class, a certain sector, Honorable Speaker. And many Kenyans, if you Google, they know who are the investors in this sector, the steel sector. We must get away from this country passing laws that seems to only geared towards pleasing some certain quotas for their personal gains, because some people somewhere are the beneficiaries of the end results of this matter. At this Honorable Speaker, we are going to legislate about everything, anything, in order to support certain forms of businesses, forgetting to look at the employer effect of those kind of changes. So, Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I support but obvious reservation, but we need to get it moving as it is. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Who else wants to contribute? Honorable Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this particular amendment because, Honorable Speaker, as has been indicated by the mover of the bill, is that this is in essence going to help in correcting the ambiguity that was caused by the previous bill. But also, Honorable Speaker, so to speak, is also just to encourage and promote a method of people being more of investors than not being investors, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, 1 year for an investor, for manufacturers, is a very long time, and especially in the steel industry, because that is one industry that doesn't have that many people. But also, Honorable Speaker, the people who are there are making a lot of impact. Honorable Speaker, we are a country that is largely an assembling nation rather than manufacturing. And therefore, when we have situations where we are encouraging people to go into the sector of manufacturing, then that is always a welcome. And Honorable Speaker, because this is a very brief amendment, with those very few remarks, I want to support this, and I submit. I thank you.
It seems like there is no further interest. This matter, we shall put the question at a later time. You can move a reply. Yes.
Sorry, Honorable Speaker, in reply, I would like to say this, that this is a bill that gives incentive to manufacturing and turns Kenya into that manufacturing giant that we have always wanted to be. And Honorable Speaker, this is an important piece of legislation that encourages manufacturing, encourages investors, and therefore it's important that we pass this bill. Also, Honorable Speaker, we are correcting the ambiguity that was created when we passed this in the Business Laws Amendment Act, the omnibus law, and therefore, because of that, and I think we need to be more careful as Parliament in future so that we don't create this kind of errors that put cabinet secretaries who are implementers of this law into an awkward position. So, Honorable Speaker, I reply.
Thank you. We shall defer the putting of the question to a later time, maybe tomorrow. Okay, next order.
Order number 12, motion, consideration of the prevention of terrorism, implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolution on suppression of terrorism regulations 2024.
I see that the chairperson of the Committee on Delegated Legislation is not present, so we'll defer that motion also. Next order.
Order number 13, motion, consideration of the prevention of terrorism, implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolution on prevention, suppression, and disruption of proliferation financing, amendment regulations 2024.
Okay, I also see that the chairperson still, so supposed to be the chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation, is still not present, so we shall proceed to the next, we'll defer it and proceed to the next order.
Order number 14, motion, consideration of sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the Kenya foreign policy.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Twelve Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations on its consideration of the sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 22nd April 2025, and approved sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, Kenya's place in the world is neither accidental nor static. It is shaped by a deliberate, constitutionally grounded foreign policy. Sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya was laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 13 February 2025, and thereafter committed to the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations for consideration. Honorable Speaker, as Kwame Nkrumah once said, and reminded us powerfully so, we face neither east nor west, but we face forward. This sessional paper embodies that forward-looking stance. It provides a bold, coherent, and adaptive roadmap for Kenya's foreign policy, anchored in our history, aligned with our developmental aspirations, and calibrated for a rapidly shifting international landscape. With strategic themes such as digital diplomacy, science and ocean diplomacy, and multilateral engagement, it positions Kenya not only as a defender of its own interests, but as a credible global voice for Africa's collective future. Honorable Speaker, Kenya's foreign policy was consolidated into a single framework in 2014, bringing together provisions from various sources, including the Constitution, treaties, and political pronouncements. The sessional paper updates this fundamental document to reflect the evolving global and domestic context, climate change, geopolitical shifts, digital disruption, and pandemics. It aligns Kenya's external relations with the national agenda like Vision 2030 and the bottom-up economic transformation agenda better, while modernizing the foreign service and broadening engagement, diplomatic history, key influences, thematic priorities, institutional frameworks, and strategies for effective implementation and evaluation. Honorable Speaker, the sessional paper addresses gaps in coordination, funding, and risk management that hindered the 2014 framework. It proposes institutional reforms, legal adjustments, and new focus areas to ensure responsive and inclusive diplomacy. Emphasis is placed on integrating diaspora, environmental, and digital initiatives to better Kenya's influence and protect its interest in an unpredictable global arena. Honorable Speaker, to ensure transparency and results, the committee observed that the paper is anchored in a rigorous results framework. This includes both midterm and end-term reviews aligned with the National Integrated Monitoring and Evaluation Systems, ministerial strategic plans, and annual performance contracts. These tools will only ensure institutional accountability, but also allow Parliament to track the implementation of foreign policy goals in measurable terms. Honorable Speaker, legislatively, the policy calls for updates to the Foreign Service Act, Cap 185E, and Privileges and Immunities Act, Cap 179, to institutionalize professionalism, enhance Nairobi's role as a diplomatic hub, and align Kenya's diplomacy with international standards. Honorable Speaker, in line with Articles 1181B of the Constitution, the committee ensured robust public participation in its review of the sessional paper. A public call for memorandum published on 19 February 2025 yielded 6 submissions from key stakeholders. While some proposals echoed existing policy provisions or laid outside the social paper scope, all contributions enrich the committee's deliberations, reinforcing transparency, accountability, and institutional integrity in Kenya's foreign policy making process. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that the policy is forward-looking and constitutionally grounded. It positions Kenya as a strategic global actor anchored in peace and security, economic diplomacy, oceans and blue economy, multilateralism, climate action, innovation, diaspora engagement, and social-cultural diplomacy, all aligned with our constitutional mandates. However, Honorable Speaker, the committee noted the implementation hurdles of this sessional paper number 1. Weak legal frameworks, institutional inefficiencies, underfunded missions, lack of labor migration policies, and poor strategic communication hinder its impact. These gaps undermine Articles 10, 16, 19, and 232 of our Constitution, calling for reforms, increased funding, and coherent public diplomacy strategy to protect national interest. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, the committee urges the House to adopt this report and approve sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya as Kenya's authoritative foreign policy blueprint. Its adoption will ensure coherent across all diplomatic legislation and initiatives, fortifying Kenya's voice on the global stage and advancing national interest and anchoring international engagement in constitutional values and strategic clarity. Honorable Speaker, this sessional paper, actually it is the first time that we have a sessional paper that talks about the Kenya's foreign policy. It's the first of its kind. And as a committee, we looked at it, we engaged all the stakeholders, and we had a retreat with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the same. And we actually agreed as a committee that this is the right way to go. And I think when you look at that document, it's a bit voluminous, and I'm sure from time to time, Kenyans and even members of parliament have been talking about where is the Kenya's foreign policy? Is it documented? Is it in writing? Is it anchored in the constitution or something like that? Now we have a document that's well grounded with a sessional paper so that any person who wants now to discuss Kenya's issues on the foreign policy will be able to refer back to the sessional paper. And I think it's something that we are looking at. People have been talking about Kenya. Where do you lie? Do you look east? Do you look west? Or so? But I think the best way, as Komen Nkrumah said, and I mentioned before, we're neither looking east or west, but we are looking forward. That means we're able to engage as a country with any country that has the interest of Kenya at heart, and equally we also have the interest at heart. That means our interests come first so that we can serve the Kenyans, whether they are in Kenya or they're in the diaspora. So with that few remarks, I want to beg to move and equally ask okay, I will ask Honorable Kandie to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the motion for the adoption of the sessional paper titled The Grand Tragedy to Position Kenya's Foreign Policy in the Global Landscape, and to commend the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations for robust review and strategic recommendations. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that the sessional paper does not shy away from confronting reality. It identifies key structural and systemic risks facing Kenya's foreign policy. Apparatus ranging from legal and regulatory misalignments, forex fluctuations, and shrinking global markets to climate shocks, rising cyber vulnerabilities, fiscal austerity, and persistent regional instability. These are not abstract concerns. Honorable Speaker, they are real threats to Kenya's economic diplomacy, regional leadership, and citizen welfare. Honorable Speaker, The paper recommends the adoption of public-private partnerships, PPP, to optimize diplomatic assets, and it's an innovative move that responds to budgetary constraints without compromising Kenya's global visibility. Most notably, the reclassification of Ministry of Foreign Affairs on diaspora affairs under the security sector, already approved by the cabinet, acknowledges the evolving nexus between diplomacy, national security, and strategic economic engagement. In sum up, Honorable Speaker, the committee is persuaded that this paper is not merely a bureaucratic document. It is a blueprint for reimagining Kenya's place in the world with clarity, courage, and constitutional fidelity. It lays the foundation for foreign policy, and this is principled, pragmatic, and future-proof. I therefore second the motion and urge this House to adopt the paper as a strategic compass for Kenya's diplomacy in the 21st century. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to second.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations on its consideration of the sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya, laid at the table of this House on Tuesday, 22nd April 2025, and approves the sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I do support the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations as regards this sessional paper, which has been brought to the House. Honorable Speaker, sometimes the country is taken aback when we discuss the sessional papers because they are not well versed with them, they're not well informed, and sometimes we have also not done much public participation regarding the same. I give an example of the sessional paper number 1 of 1965, which was on African socialism. The paper was actually laid by the then Minister for Economic Planning, the late Joseph Thomas Mboya, and it outlined how the country was to move forward as regards African socialism vis-a-vis its economic development. And it was a good paper. It has brought us quite far, but just because it was not well elaborated on, one opposer of that paper was actually the late J.M. Kariuki, who in his debate in this House made a point that that paper was creating 10 millionaires amongst 10 million poor Kenyans. And that was taken to be the gospel truth, and it was an act of misinformation. As we debate this paper today, we must admit that we have not had a good policy on foreign relations, and especially a sessional paper on it. And this is what this paper tries to do, to govern how this country would proceed with its foreign relations vis-a-vis the constitutional provisions and the statutes that relate to various acts on foreign matters. It comes sometimes as a surprise when we have even our own foreign relations persons who do not know what our policy is. And this cannot be encouraged. And I believe this paper will now form part of the education to be given to those who are appointed to serve in our foreign missions out there as ambassadors, high commissioners, and attaches. This is a good paper, which in my view I do propose that we actually support this report, adopt it, and then we proceed to familiarize ourselves with what the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya is going to be from now henceforth. With those remarks, I beg to support.
Any other members who want to contribute? Honorable Millie Odhiambo, member for Suba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I wish to indicate that I'm a member of the committee and wish to support this policy. Madam Speaker, I want to agree with our chair that in Kenya we have no choice but to look forward in a rapidly changing world. Madam Speaker, it would only require a stranger in the world not to know that things are happening globally very quickly and very fast. If you see what is going on in the United States of America, only countries that are not strategic are likely to survive economically and otherwise. And Kenya must also reform its policy to conform with what is going on in the US. And in conforming with what is going on in the US, we must place Kenyans first. We have always known that a lot of Kenyans have preferred the United States of America as a strategic destination, both for tourism and for education. But given that there are challenges now in that direction, we must put Kenya first. Donald Trump is putting America first. Kenya must put Kenyans first. It means, Madam Speaker, that if we have to discover new frontiers, doesn't mean we are ignoring the United States, but if you have had a friend who, for maybe I can give it as an example as we as women, if you have a boyfriend that you love very much, and you see your boyfriend is courting another girl, it's time for you maybe not to be to start a boy. A man is also a boy. We take care of you, you are boys. Madam Speaker, when you see this boy beginning to start looking elsewhere, then, Madam Speaker, you don't bury your head in the sand. You start looking for options so that if he bolts, you have choices. So let Kenya open eyes. We've just come from Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And Madam Speaker, we were actually a form of tourism attraction in that place because they've never seen Black people. Most of them have never seen, so we are being stopped and photos were being taken of us. But as a leader, I look at what are the strategic things that Kenya can get from this country. We can actually, they are trying, if you go every corner, they have international schools teaching English. Those are opportunities we can go and take our people there to teach English. Madam Speaker, there is opportunity for trade in that area. So that's a virgin area that Kenya can consider as a place that we can't put all our eggs in one basket. So yes, Kenya must actually look forward. We cannot look east or west. We have no choice but to look forward. Madam Speaker, again, the other issue that I wanted to say is the challenge for us as a country is we must be consistent. We are very good at coming up with very good legislation and policy. But for them to be sellable, Madam Speaker, we must be convinced about the things that we are passed as a nation, whether they are law or they are policy. We must own them and we must practice them. We must walk the talk. If Kenya says that we are looking forward, then look forward. Don't look confused, look forward. And that means as a country, let's see what works and put Kenya and the interest of Kenyans first. Madam Speaker, the other issue that I wanted to say is that Kenya must also undertake a strategic review, which I know maybe we did when we are coming up with this policy. And we are stuck many years back. Whenever I hear Kenyans speaking, we keep talking about we are the greatest economic hub. We are. Have you ever been to Ethiopia of late? We are the greatest economic hub. When were you last in Arusha? We are the greatest economic hub. When were you last in Rwanda? Mr. Speaker, while we are sleeping, our neighbors are rising. And Kenya must place itself strategically, economically, knowing that this is just like even any business venture. The others, when they see that you are doing well, we look for different ways to go ahead of you. And how are they going ahead of us? Look at Rwanda. The same thing I've seen at Tashkent. You walk in and the first thing you see is how clean, how tidy, how safe. And those are concepts that must be infused in any foreign policy document. You cannot say that we are going to promote tourism so that people can come to Kenya when they are fearful that they are walking and somebody might grab our bags. Mr. Speaker, when we were in Tashkent, Mr. Speaker, I was amazed. There were people who were assigned to us as translators, and they did an amazing work. And in our typical Kenyan way, we wanted to say thank you by tipping. They will not allow you to tip. They say in their culture, a thank you suffices. Why can't we have those uniquely African, Kenyan cultures that we are losing that made us so attractive? Teaching people to smile. It used to come naturally. I know because we are having challenges, it's going. Just our hospitality. As an African people, we are very hospitable. That seems to be growing off the window, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to leverage on technology, especially if you are talking about making Kenya a serious economic hub. I've had the chair speaking also of the PPP. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Parliament of Kenya, and I want to ask that we take most MPs through this, the training on PPPs. And then let us also let the public know. If you look at what is happening in Ethiopia and every others, it's because of PPPs. But then unfortunately, we are so opaque in the way we do things, maybe because there are few people who want to steal here and there, but that, especially when we don't have other means of getting resources without taxing Kenyans immediately, of course, because you'll be taxed eventually, is the PPP is a way to go. So, Madam Speaker, finally, I want to suggest that Kenya must work stealthily, but carefully and strategically as we forge ahead. Madam Speaker, we must walk the talk. I was giving an example here to Honorable Junet as we are seated here, that there's a lot that is changing in the world and we don't realize it.
Honorable Millie, I am here. There's no Madam Speaker.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Speaker. It's good once in a while for us to discriminate. You are always discriminating against us. So, Mr. Speaker, now that the Madam Speaker has left, I want to say that I was talking to Honorable Junet here earlier. And I was telling him that when I studied my master's in New York University, I had to go physically to the university library and study. And when I was in Nairobi University or the University of Nairobi, we would go to the library and we get the books and you open a page and discover some malicious guy had chopped off the relevant pages you are referred to. And then you spend all your entire life finding out, did anybody make a copy? Mr. Speaker, right now I'm doing my PhD at this university on leadership and governance. And Mr. Speaker, what happens as I'm going online and I'm studying, AI comes and tells me, why are you struggling when you can do X, Y? Of course, it's very tempting, but because I come from the traditional school, I want to study a journal. I actually love it even when I have a book and a real journal in my hand and I read and I light. That's kind of my kind of thing. But now the library has come to me. I don't have to go to the library and look for those pages. But our mind as a country is still where we are going to the library to read journals in the library where somebody has plucked off. We cannot say we are technological as a country, but our psyche is still very analog. We must know the world is moving extremely fast. When I was in New York University, Mr. Speaker, if you referred to any study that was like now season are there, they're in the spring. And you made reference to a study in last summer. It was outdated. The last you can refer to is, in the winter. So they say in the study of the winter. That's how fast the world is moving. But Kenya, we are trying to catch up. So I'm even seeing in my university, we are still referring to XYZ, but we are not moving that fast. So what I'm saying is we must change our psyche as a nation in the way we pass law. We are doing excellent, I think, because the majority or the average age of this parliament is fairly young, extremely well educated. I see now members are bringing so many bills. The days when we used to bring bill when I first came into this parliament, it was like you performed a miracle. There's no more any miracle. But now we need to move from the miracle of passing laws to implementing. We need to move from the miracle of passing policies to implementing. And this is sometimes where the technocrats fail us. And I would want to encourage, if we are truly patriots, that sometimes I think my little action does not affect my child not getting a job, does not affect my neighbor getting the hospital's bill sorted out. But I broke a piece of the complete whole when I did one wrong thing. So let's all learn to do things in the right way so that we can move the country forward. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I do support.
The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me also stand here to support sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on Kenya's foreign policy. Honorable Speaker, as a country, we must leverage on a strategic location. We must leverage on our history. We must leverage on our connections. Our foreign policy, Honorable Speaker, should first and foremost be for the benefit of the people of Kenya. We must see results, we must see benefits, and we must guard against any form of subjugation of the people of Kenya simply because pursuing a certain foreign policy. Honorable Speaker, ordinarily when a policy is being developed, I hope and believe there is abundant public participation. There is adequate public participation where issues are deliberated, discussed, and basically sorted out. Honorable Speaker, I remember when I was personally involved in developing the national land policy and the housing policy, we went all over this country. We did a lot of desk research to find out the best practices that we put up together to provide a roadmap on how to proceed and deal with the things. Honorable Speaker, ordinarily, a policy must be formulated, approved before subsequent legislations are passed. Unfortunately, in this country, Honorable Speaker, we passed a bill on foreign relations sometime last year, without a foreign policy. Of course, everybody, a session of paper on foreign policy, everybody will obviously ask, what was the anchor? Or is this the typical way of Kenya doing things? You speak out the end, then you start saying the end. I mean, the end justifies the means. I just hope that there has been adequate consultation with the ordinary mwananchi, the experts, and those who serve in foreign relations. Honorable Speaker, I've had an occasion to travel before becoming a member of parliament and also as a member of parliament. We have very commendable people outside there serving our missions abroad. And Honorable Speaker, one of the greatest challenges they go through is inadequate funding. I just hope and pray the policy has addressed the issue of facilitation to enable them undertake the functions or the duties that have been assigned to undertake. It will be a terrible remiss on our side if we have not addressed that particular matter. Honorable Speaker, the issue of strategic missions becomes critical. We have areas that Kenya can exploit for purpose of enhancing, towards arrival, purpose of enhancing trade, and other related activities. Yet we do not have adequate or physical presence, simply because at times, whoever we send in those foreign missions, I want to be very guarded in the use of the word I want to use, and Honorable Speaker will permit me. I want to put it in brackets. Political rejectees who have no training at all in diplomacy, who feel they're just going to look for a job. It's not a career calling. Simply, they report, sit around, come to the office, walk around, and do nothing. I hope Chair is here and the committee are alive of these challenges, and they will indeed resolve these issues. Honorable Speaker, if you speak to career diplomats in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they cut a case of a very frustrated lot. They have the skills, they have the experience, they have the drive, yet when it comes to the appointment of ambassadors and high commissioners or go to missions, they pick anybody, anywhere, anytime, as long as that particular person is politically correct. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, it's no wonder that in this country, we have made so many diplomatic goofs. We have made so many diplomatic mistakes that literally embarrass Kenyans. And then you ask a very simple question. Do we have a diplomatic, do you have a Minister of Foreign Affairs? Do you have a robust diplomatic position that enables us to speak out what to say and what not to say? Honorable Speaker, we as a politician, when you go where it was written even, I think in Chinua Achebe, when you talk about old bonds, old women become upset, and old men likewise. You want those old women to support you, and yet you make reckless statements, you make reckless maneuvers that really leaves you wondering, what is it all about? And Honorable Speaker, Honorable Millie Odhiambo has talked about that you will probably, when you have a boyfriend and he starts looking for another girl, I just want to correct, not because you have a problem, just because probably the man wants to sample. In any case, sharing at times is caring. Honorable Speaker, Kenya and the world should not have a problem. We are supposed to interact and do business with everybody. So we must anchor our foreign policy that as we deal with the East, we do not antagonize the West. The West does not see as if we are abandoning them to go to the East. That requires tact, requires skills, requires training, requires experience. The people who make top-level decisions, Honorable Speaker, do not have that training, do not have that experience. That's why you find we oscillate one regime, we're on this side, another one we're on this side. When we go and we get stuck in the other side, we try to go back this other side. We end up, Honorable Speaker, with very expensive loans. We end up with programs that are of no value to the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, foreign policy should transcend personal interests. Honorable Speaker, the tiff we have with Sudan was avoidable. Tiff we have with Sudan was avoidable. Personal business relationship between two people should not be where we are now. To the extent that a foreign country can petition the National Assembly, the parliament of a country, to intervene is a very telling statement, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want us, we need to put our acts together. We were rated very highly many years back, but Kenya is no longer rated, is not revered, is not respected as it was then. If we were, Honorable Speaker, we would not have been taken on a roulette route in Addis Ababa, whereby Raila Amolo Odinga, with his status in this continent, could have been beaten or could have considered to avoid lengthy processes to an unknown somebody from a small country. That shows, Honorable Speaker, that our foreign policy has got a lot to be done. Much, much more has to be done, Honorable Speaker. And I call upon the committee that oversights. We must get our acts together. We must truly oversight. We must not pander to the executive. We must not be yes and yes people so that we only go to praise and worship, even where the mistakes are seen, where the shortcomings are seen. We have no guts, we have no courage to point them out so that we address on the issues. And of course, Honorable Speaker, a policy, a sessional paper policy is not static, must be alive to changing circumstances. Donald Trump has thrown the world upside down. He says America first, the rest of you don't care. He can impose any tariffs because he knows the economy of America is strong enough, can withstand any shocks. I hope as we go along, we'll be alive to changes in the world, how world leaders look at them, look at us, and generally realign, amend, and realign, evaluate, reassess, realign our foreign policy over time to align with the changing international arena. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Very well, Honorable Wundo, and on my screen is, we don't have any more interest on this one. Yes, Honorable, but please key in your card. I can't see you here.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to comment our proposed sessional paper on foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya 2025. I think it is the second one. The first one we had published was around 2014. Until then, we didn't have any particular policy document regulating our foreign policy or international relations. Honorable Speaker, when I got this document, I first quickly took a good look, and my expectation was that I would see a certain set of goals. What really defines the anchor of our foreign policy, or how we intend to conduct our foreign relations. And I'd also took time to look at what other countries have done. For example, Americans were among the very first in 1918, when President Woodrow Wilson published the first 14 points of US foreign policy. So when I looked at this, I saw it was a very large document, and reading it is very difficult to try and understand what the core pillars of our foreign policy is. Honorable Speaker, foreign policy is simply a set of principles, objectives that will guide the conduct of a state in terms of relations with other states or with other organizations, meaning at bilateral level or multilateral level. So my proposal would be, we need to do a bit of refinement. It is a very lengthy document, but if you look at it keenly, the key objective of our foreign policy is basically the pursuit, protection, and promotion of the national interest. Be that interest could be military interest, it could be economic interest, it could be political interest. But that is the overarching objective. And if you read this document, you clearly see what you may call the traditional values that have anchored our policy from independence. And those traditional values are reciprocity, non-alignment, Pan-Africanism, non-interference, and good neighborliness. But modern foreign policy has adopted, if you study what other countries have adopted new non-traditional values and principles upon which they anchor their foreign policy. For example, I'll just give a few examples. Today, countries anchor their foreign policy on certain values like democracy. You are not going to associate with pariah states that kill their citizens, stifle democracy, don't respect human rights, don't respect the rule of law, countries that don't pursue peace and peaceful resolution of conflicts, that are always at war, countries that dismember our environment, countries that don't respect international law and international decisions, and countries that undermine multilateralism. Why am I saying this? Our foreign policy should not just set the objective, which is the promotion, protection, and pursuit of national interest. It must set a very clear light. What is our value system as a country? What is it that we want to promote in relations that we have with other countries and other organizations? So I think we need that clarity in this sessional paper. We must clearly state what the objective is and what the values are. Secondly, I want to make some comments just to observe what is happening around lately in our country. Number one, Nairobi is supposed to be a hub of a diplomatic hub. We host a lot of international organizations. But there's a trend where we are not host. In particular, there's the question of tax. A lot of these international organizations, by tradition, if you look at the Vienna Convention on diplomatic immunities and privileges, extend certain privileges to these organizations. Because the money that they bring into these countries, collected from several countries, tax exemption is granted. Today, we are harassing a lot of international organizations. Some are just established by African countries, others are international, more global in nature. Yet we are bringing in a lot of conditionalities around them. That is making Nairobi not attractive to host international organizations. And I think Ministry of Foreign Affairs should get its hands on this. These international organizations not only bring multiculturalism in Kenya and create Nairobi as a good center for people of the world to come and do work, but they bring jobs and money. We get more out of hosting them than tax collections from members of staff, where we even harass members of staff in those organizations from Kenya. We insist on taxing them. But when you tax them, it is the organization that will compensate them for the tax. And if other countries are putting their money in that organization, they don't want to be paying your tax. So I think there's a lot of work we need to do, Foreign Affairs needs to do, to maintain the status of Nairobi as a diplomatic hub. Secondly, I'm a little disappointed that Ministry of Foreign Affairs has literally remained mute on the impact of Trump-related policies on our diaspora. Today, Kenyans are being harassed in United States of America. Others are facing deportation. Others are hiding in churches. They don't even go to pray for fear of deportation. I've not had any comments. I've not had any interventions. I've not had any, but when you read this, there's a lot of talk about diaspora. You will see on the element of diaspora, we are talking about Kenyans who are outside sending money. We are not talking about other people who could become Kenyans, who are also Kenyan diaspora. This is what we talked earlier when we were discussing the issue of the Wapare, the right of return. Those people in the Caribbean, in America, in Latin America, who have ancestry in Kenya, who left here as slaves, whose descendants left here, whose ancestors left here as slaves. It is now recognized under international law, including agreements signed at the AU, that we should give them a right of return if they so wish to become citizens. So I think this paper, when dealing with diaspora diplomacy, should extend to that particular angle. And finally, I just want to associate with what my good brother, Honorable Oundo, said. Good diplomacy requires competent diplomats. I think we are beginning to undermine that very much. There's a problem. Even when we were in the Grand Coalition, we did agree with the Ambassador Mudaura that we will never dilute the presence of career diplomats in our foreign service. There's a lot of political convenience today where we are putting people who are not qualified to handle even stations that require highly trained diplomats with the necessary sophistications and domain knowledge of what goes on there. So I think this policy should come also with clear indication that foreign service or certain foreign stations shall be reserved for career diplomats or people who truly meet the qualifications. Because you have no point sending somebody to a station that is so important, but without the necessary qualifications or domain knowledge. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mover. Where's the mover? We call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank the honorable members who have raised a number of issues. I don't want to speak to each one, but just one specific one where members have talked about career diplomats and the issue of members, especially from the political side, being appointed. And I think it's not good to use the word political rejects. They are not political rejects. I think they just want, the voters decided that it's not your time now and that somebody else takes over. So I think it's not about political rejects. It's a matter of going for elections and the electors deciding that you need to take a break. And if you look at
Honorable Wonder, there's no point of order on that. It's just speaking, putting language. That is
I'm trying to put in a proper
sanitized.
language.
Order, member. Remember, Honorable Wundo, even you yourself, you were reluctant to use that word, and you knew very well it was not admissible. Proceed.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the Foreign Service Act now, it talks about a ratio of 70-30, 70 for career diplomats and 30 from outside. Initially, it was actually like almost 40 career diplomats and 60 outside. But with the Foreign Service Act that we have in place now, and actually is also tabulated in this central paper number 1 of 2025, it talks about 70-30. And I think that probably cures the issue of saying that we need to have career diplomats in most of the stations. So I think it's something that is looking forward. We are trying our level best to ensure that this foreign policy is a living document. Members have talked about that it's a living document. That means it's not cast in stone. It's something that is changing in realities. So I think, thank you very much. We have taken note of that for your contributions, and I beg to reply.
Honorable members, we shall put the question in the next sitting. Next order.
Order number 15, the Learners with Disabilities Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2023, second reading.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Education. Any member of the Education Committee? I think the chairperson or Departmental Committee on Education was away on some official business, and therefore, next order.
Order number 16, the Treaty Making and Ratification Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 9 of 2024. Second reading.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Treaty Making and Ratification Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 9 of 2024, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, the principal object of this bill is to amend the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, Chapter 4D of the laws of Kenya, to include a special enactment procedure for economic treaties to strengthen the participation of the National Assembly in the treaty-making process and to enhance efficiency in the treaty-making process. Honorable Speaker, as the House is very much aware, all international treaties, conventions, and agreements that our country ratifies actually become part of our internal laws, domestic laws. And they become part of the domestic laws because they have to be brought to Parliament for purposes of ratification or approval, so that once the country signs a treaty out there, it is then brought into the House, it is ratified, and it becomes part of our domestic law. The problem we have had is that even those treaties that we ratified since independence upon commencement of the new constitution, became part of our domestic law. And after the commencement of the new constitution, all treaties now must be brought to the House for ratification. And once that is done, they are confirmed to be part of our laws. However, there comes a time that this House asks questions as regards exactly what some of these treaties are. And since the input of the House is minimum, we have to live with it because there is no room for the House to amend such treaties. So we have to live with it, we have to ratify as they are, and they are binding on us in the form they are in. And if we breach them, we are actually in the breach of our own laws. This is the reason why a proposal has now been brought to the House, and this is very good law, I must confess, by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, so that we can amend and make certain provisions peculiar to certain circumstances, whereby this House will now be involved in the treaty-making process. And those two instances are Clause 3 proposes to amend Section 3 of the Principal Act by deleting what there is and introducing a new clause where multilateral treaties, including treaties which deal with the trade agreements, where Kenya undertakes to engage in fewer trade protections with other countries to promote more trade. And number 2, treaties that relate to taxation, trade, or investment, or unilateral agreements between Kenya and any other country involving a one-sided arrangement in which Kenya benefits from lower trade barriers from the other country. These are specific 4 instances when we will now be required to bring such agreements to the House, not for ratification, but as the process begins. I will take you to clause number 4, which makes a provision that the new Section 5A is introduced after Section 5. And this is exactly where you find objects of this particular bill, because it says that within 14 days of commencement of negotiations for a treaty, and the treaty are the ones referred in clause 3, the cabinet secretary responsible for matters relating to the treaty making shall notify the National Assembly of the following. Here, our cabinet secretary for foreign relations, foreign affairs, would have to bring to the attention of the House within 14 days when the country starts negotiating treaties with foreign countries. And what is to be brought to the attention is set out in subclause A to E, and includes the negotiation objectives, the proposed heads of agreement, the need for the treaty, the potential benefits of the treaty to Kenya, the implications of the agreement on the economy, existing agreements, laws, and taxes. Then from there, we have to move on with the subclause 2, which is going to be the new Section 5A, subsection 2. The relevant cabinet secretary shall notify the National Assembly of any changes to information relating to the negotiation of a treaty within 7 days of such change. What this in essence means, once we begin negotiating a treaty within 14 days, it has to be brought to the House. This treaty is economic purely. It is not every treaty. It has to be brought to the House, and after it is brought to the House, as the process continues, there are possibly changes that will be brought to the provisions of the treaty, and within 7 days of occurrence of those changes, the House must be informed. The new Subclause 3 relates to the relevant committee of the National Assembly. No. Clause 2, yes, the relevant committee of the National Assembly, then in as far as it's practically possible, would have to confer with the cabinet secretary once the treaty is brought to the House. Again, this is similar to what we call pre-publication scrutiny, when we actually look at laws before they are published, or even what are called the bylaws, the delegated legislation. We look at it before it is published, so that just in case there is any input from the House, it is included in what is going to be published. In subclause 4, because this is what is very important, the relevant cabinet secretary shall table an annual report to the National Assembly on the status of the ongoing negotiation of treaties. All the treaties that have to be brought into this House will now have a record or a register kept, so that every year the cabinet secretary would have to give us a report on the status of each of the treaties being negotiated. And from there we move to the proposal which is clause 5, which proposes to amend section 6 of the Principal Act to make the following provisions. In negotiating an economic treaty, the national executive or the relevant state department shall ensure that the terms of the treaty do not adversely affect. We have A to D, which are the areas should not curtail